Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 23 in the Slither series, also known as the Crunchy Cobra Jet. If you've been following along, you already know that I started with a very rusty 69 Mach 1. And I'm rebuilding this car basically piece by piece using some of the pieces from the original car and a lot of Dynacorn parts. Now in a previous video, I have installed the firewall, the frame rails, and the upper or the lower section of the cowl. And today what I want to do is get the upper section of the cowl in, maybe get the air boxes in as well. That is on the agenda, it needs to happen. But I have something else I need to do before I put in the cowl panel. So here we have the upper cowl, and in the previous video I showed how I welded in all these spot welds and everything. And I've been in talks with the owner of the car, and we've decided we're going to do away with this chimney. Now, normally what you would do in this situation is, if you're going to save this, is you would clean everything up in here, add seam sealer around the perimeter, and then add paint to the inside of this. A lot of times I like to use Rust-Oleum. It's a very good product, and it will help protect what is here, and it lasts a very long time. In this case, we're going to be putting in a classic auto air system, and they call for this to be blocked off from the underside with a cover and sealant, and so we really don't gain anything by doing this, by leaving this in here. So I'm going to remove this, what I call it a chimney, and if you look, I'm going to show you this. This is why you have to seam seal this stuff. If you can see around my hand. Let me grab it from the other side. If I just squeeze that right there, look at how that's barely attached. There's only a couple of spot welds holding this on, so it's not going to take much to take it off. The other thing with that is it has this little flange on the inside, and that was put in there basically whenever they're assembling this, so that it has somewhere to sit, be located, and be tack welded on or spot welded on. So I'm going to remove this chimney, and I'm also going to eliminate this flange and make a patch that's going to fit right in there. Other than that, I have a lot of grinding to do, smooth all this down, and as I mentioned before, I'll be putting in the air box. So the air box goes in this location. I have those here. That's one for the driver's side, I believe, and this one is for the passenger side. So I have a little bit of grinding to do on one of those, that one in particular, to get it cleaned up, but it will be installed here as well. So I have to grind down these welds. So still a lot of grinding to do, but I want to get this out of the way. Hopefully I can just use my spot weld cutter, get underneath this and knock it off without doing any damage to the rest of it. So let's just see what happens. So it's going to put up a little bit of a fight. I think what I'll end up doing is taking a drill and just hitting these little spot welds and weaken them up a bit. This is where having a little bit of dirt on your gloves helps a lot. Just puts a little shadow right there that I can see it. See there? This is why you need to seam seal this stuff. So this is bare metal underneath here, and if you look, that is rust, and that was sandwiched between this flange, or this part of the lower cowl, and that flange. So the difficulty is, what do you do with that, right? Other than seam sealing it, there's not much you can do. You could pull up on these flanges a little bit, spray in some primer, try to get underneath there, then press that back down, and then seam seal it. You know, but that's what you see. Well, these are the things you don't see that'll come back and haunt you later. Anybody need a chimney? Yes, I know. I put the back glass in the Mustang, in the Mach 1, and a lot of people will point out that I need to cover it up. So you know what? There it is. Now it's protected. So while I'm here, why not knock down some of these welds? Okay, in this spot here, what I don't like is we're going to have this flange left over unless I remove it. And the reason, it's a slight concern, but if anything were to get in there, it could kind of get hung on that. So I'm going to eliminate that. Get that out of the way. Trying to decide which way I want to do this. I could just take this grinder and grind that edge off. Let's see what that does. I think my disc has about had it. Okay, let me tell you. I bought all these discs right here off of Amazon for like 20 bucks, I think, if that. And they have done pretty well, considering one of these now from Harbor Freight is like $3 or $4. And these come in 120 grit, 80 grit, 60 grit, and 40 grit. So maybe I'll post a link to these as well. The only thing about these is they're really probably just a tick over 4.5 inches, and they'll hit that guard, but it's ready to go. It feels pretty good. That would be silly to leave that hump right there, so Okay, now we need to make a patch for that. So what you do is you take your old Loki Thor jump starter box, because it's nice and thin. Cut a panel out of that. And since we don't have the airbox in the way, we can come in through this side panel. Perfect. This is why arts and crafts are important in school. So you can do stuff like this later in life. Support the arts. Look at that, I could just weld that in. Okay, here, next thing. I need to come up with a piece of flat metal. You know what? There's not very many pieces of flat metal available. However, we have this. Now, we've already sacrificed the firewall. I really doubt there's going to be anything used on this firewall, but I've got this really nice flat piece right here. And it's also the same thickness as the cowl. So all I have to do is cut this out. Ta-da! Now there's a couple ways you can do this. I happen to have this old nibbler tool. This is actually from Northern. Let's see if I can do this. If I get in there, that edge is kind of rough from where I cut it. Yeah. All right, let's try that again. Needless to say, you don't want to slip. Now, at this point, there's actually a couple ways you can address this. One, you could take a little sanding disc, which is probably what I'll do, and trim that down. Or I could use the big aggressive disc and knock it down. And if you don't have a nibbler, I'll just show you this. I know I've shown this tool before. This is a throatless shear. So what you can do, and I have to clamp this down to really use it, but you can take this throatless shear and trim it like that. So let me grab my vice grips and show you. So if you took this and you could just follow the line, how about that? How close did I get? A little bit of sanding, and it'll be in. Okay, I think I have it. Put a couple magnets underneath here. I know it fits. I know it fits. There it is. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Now all I have to do is weld that in. Okay, I got all that welded, blended down pretty close to totally flush, but there are a few spots that are a little bit low where some of these spot welds were that held the chimney on. And just to be careful or be cautious, I'm going to skim coat this with some Rage Ultra body filler and smooth this completely. I don't want to take a chance on any of these little pockets being able to capture water, and I'll be able to take care of that right now before I do anything else. So I'm going to address that, smooth it up, and then of course add more paint inside of here. And I still have some other welds that I need to blend down, but I think you get the idea on that. So here's where we're at. Of course, I've sprayed this with primer, and I also sprayed it with the Rust-Oleum. I even got some runs in it just to make sure I had enough on there. The beauty of that is I know there's plenty of paint on this entire cowl. So with that said, what I need to do is work on these air boxes. And as I was looking at this and trying to decide how far I wanted to go in this video, I realized that there's a bit more to do in this area than I really thought about. The reason for that is because of the airbox going on here. This area needs to be seam sealed. So what I plan to do is clean this up a little more, apply seam sealer to this surface completely so that any water that may get in there will work its way outward. Along with that, I needed to finish grinding on the air boxes. So that's what I did. I ground down these welds. I'm not worried about this being a perfect transition. These are solid, not going anywhere. And on the inside, I also ground down the welds, but what I may do is add some seam sealer on this surface right here, just to make the transition a little smoother. It's hard to imagine that there will be, water collecting in there in any way, but I will clean that up slightly with some seam sealer, and then paint the inside of these as well with the Rust-Oleum so that all that is filled in and covered. Along with that, as I was saying earlier, this area here, I will scuff all this and spray it with Rust-Oleum as well and make sure that that is all painted up. So it takes care of inside of that. That's a stop point. Okay, that is all seam sealed, Rust-Oleum paint on there. I feel very good about how that is all sealed up now. Shouldn't be a problem down the road. Also, the inside of these are sprayed. Still a little tacky, but that's okay. And what we're gonna do is just clamp these up in place. Also, we'll say that I bared the metal where the contact points are gonna be. So it's critical to get this level up here at the top. So that's lined up nice. And then we should be able to just clamp this all together. Get my clamp set right. Anytime you get chips on your clamps, basically you degauss them by hitting them on the floor. Lose that magnetic draw. Just a little tip for you. So that's where that's going to end up. And I'll weld that on. Same thing over here. All prepped and sealed up good. This tucks up underneath this flange, hits behind the inner rocker. Somebody asked me how many vice grips I own. I think it was Rick Gain. And I jokingly said all of them, because all the ones I have, I own. Just saying. None of these are on a rental basis. But I understood where he was coming from. I was just making a joke. I don't know is the answer. I really don't know how many pair of vice grips I have. But it's a lot. A lot. So I'll get those welded in, and we're that much closer to getting the cowl in. And I'll point out as well, I did scuff the bottom side of this, primed it, and painted it as well. So that's going to add some protection there. Yep, it's looking like we're looking closer to a complete Mustang at this point. I'll also point out I have something else I'm going to do later on, and I'll be putting these in. These are reinforcements that go inside the shock towers, so still a lot of welding to do, but I need to take care of these first. So here I have the upper half sitting in place, and I went around and marked where I want to put holes so I can weld it on. In this corner, there's just nothing there. It wasn't made to have something there. On the bottom side, you can see where the flange stops. So make note of that whenever you're trying to put one of these together. Always make sure you have a backup location for where you're going to put your holes. On the upper section here, I did a stagger pattern, and I was looking at this Mach 1, and the pattern is very much staggered. I can feel like right there's one spot weld, and then I can come over maybe about 2 inches, so where my fingers are, and then in between I'm finding another kind of spot weld. So I don't think it's that critical. You can have plenty of spot welds, but that's the pattern I'm going to go with and just stagger it out. I still have to finish drawing these out here, but I have the upper pattern. So I'm going to punch these holes and weld this on. That hole punch tool is very, very handy, but sometimes you just can't get close enough to where the hole needs to be simply because of the shape of the metal. So of course I use my cordless drill, which I've used many times in the past, and drilled out those holes that I could not get with the punch, and then I followed that up with the step drill on the back side to try to break off any of the edges, and after that I followed it up with the sanding disc so that it would bear the metal and make it better for welding, which it did. Well, I'm pretty happy with how all this is looking right now. The upper cowl is welded in. I'm not going to weld in the core support or the front aprons yet because we plan to do some modifications to the tranny tunnel, and this would just be in my way going back and forth. It's not going to matter. It's not going to change anything. They're in a fixed location. Everything is welded and everything is painted on the inside, and it is now a solid front end. I still have the little pieces I need to put here, and those are original pieces that we have as seen here, and these will need cleaned up. They still have part of the old cowl and some sheet metal on them. Of course they need blasted, but these are original pieces, so those will be going in later. Of course, as I said, I'll be working on the tranny tunnel, and yeah, I'm really liking this. Now, either on the next video I will be working on the torque boxes or the frame connectors. So there you can see what that frame connector looks like. It's a very smooth frame connector, matches up to the floor very nicely, but I'll have to make sure everything fits properly. So I may go back and forth a little between the torque box and that piece just to make sure they don't have to interact with each other. Alright, things are looking good. As I've said many times, test fit, test fit, test fit. This is where it pays off in the end. You start having problems early on, you find those problems, and then you fix them and adjust accordingly, and whenever you weld stuff together, you're good to go. So hopefully you all continue to do that and benefit from that mantra that I say. Now, the next video again will either be the torque boxes and or the frame connectors. I have to figure out if they interfere with each other, and that could be a problem. So either I have to do one first or the other first, depending. But I feel like the torque boxes will probably be the next video, and then of course the frame connectors. So at this point I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank all my patrons who are supporting me in this channel, and I suggest that you become a patron. I try to make these videos as useful and beneficial for everybody, but YouTube does not do very well compensating me for that. So if you're interested, there are links in the description below. Also, there are product links for the Arc Captain welder, Evolution power tools, and anything else that I may be promoting or using at this time. So once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.